Hi, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerdbird podcast. Today, I'll be speaking with writer and creator Mark Maia, here to promote his new comic series, So-Called Living, now on Kickstarter until April 25th. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
Well, thank you for joining us today. But outside my introduction, who is Mark Maia in his own words?
Mark Maya is I guess, a creative person that uh, likes to get his hands in everything. I've done video games. I've been an artist my entire life, although that's not what I'm doing for my comic books. And in video games, I've done everything but programming. So like voice acting, art directing, background painting, animator, and now I'm getting into comic books. So I also have a YouTube channel that's focused on board games. So everything that falls into the geek umbrella, of like popular things, that's all the things I like to do.
Yeah, me as
So
well, pretty much. But how was you dipping your toe and everything? Was it more of just like something you were interested in, or was it more so you applied for this job and then you kind of worked your way up, or it's like a natural transition getting into those different things?
it was definitely a natural transition for me. Like my career started, I got I how did this happen? My career started basically with in advertising. My mother was a cleaning lady at a studio, and she said, "Oh, my." She came into me. She came to me one day, and she was like, "Oh, the offices I clean, they do what you do." And my mom's like an old school European, so she's telling me this in Portuguese, and I was like, "You don't even know what I do. Like you don't you don't know." And she's like, I was like, "All right." Well, I was working on a school project at the time. I gave her an assignment I had, which was a digital photography Photoshop manipulation assignment. Gave it to her, and she took it to him, and it just happened to be like an ad for a make believe movie, like a thon thing. It was like just an assignment for school, and she gave it to him, and he said, "Oh, send your son into my office," and he offered me a job on the spot.
Oh,
So my
wow.
mom got me my first job into advertising, which was my first creative job. And then from there, a friend of mine that I went to school with got a job in a video game studio, and they said, "Do you know any other animators?" And they're like, "Well, I've only I he said I would only ever recommend one. You recommended me." So they called me and they offered me a job. So my career has been a series of events of people giving my name to somebody else, and then somebody hiring me. Every job I've ever applied to, I've been turned down, but I've had great success with people who know me just dropping my name. So, and my entire career has been like this. I've been lucky enough to know the right people to get put in the right spots. Even the contract work I'm doing now is somebody I've worked with in the past, and they're like, "Hey, we need somebody to do this. Can you do it?" And I was like, "Sure."
Hmm.
But every time I ever actually apply, get my resume, send it out to people, all I get is like, "Thanks, but no thanks." I guess I don't sell myself well. I think
Uh-huh.
like I have a lot of experience, like 24 years in the video game industry. So I have a lot of experience, but I don't do a good job of selling myself. I do a better job of selling other people. So
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of artists or just like talented, competent people do that for some reason. I don't know why we do that. We kind of just I think we're just not used to verbally communicating how we do our work. We just kind of just do it. So then it's nice to have people in our corner that will advocate for us. So is have all these, your friends and your mother in your corner, like, hey, I know somebody that knows how to do this. So you kind of don't have to. But when you do it, it's just like what do I say? How do I sell it? I'm not used to doing that. I'm just so used to just doing the work. So
yeah, and I get it. It's like that's exactly right. Is we don't know how to. It's also awkward to kind of talk yourself up. You know what I mean? It's weird. It feels so uncomfortable being like, "Oh, I'm amazing. You should hire me because I'm better than everybody else." Is pretty much what your resume is supposed to say, but not verbatim. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
supposed to indicate like, "Hey, I'm so much better than everybody else whose resume you're reading." And writing that so people can think that is just so I don't like doing it. I don't like bringing that kind of attention or kind of like talking to myself about that. I find it really difficult. So it's I don't know. It's I read a resume the other day, and And I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. And my wife read it and she was like, this is what you do. And I was like, oh, I guess it is what I do, but the way they wrote it sounds great. Like this person is, they're confident about themselves. Like I'm confident about my abilities once I get going, but I have a hard time selling myself to people. And I think that's common between all artists, like where I find like there's a lot of artists in the community, they're just unsure about themselves. They have bursts of confidence, like, hey, I'm awesome. But then as soon as they're like questioned about their awesomeness, then they might shy back, even if they are awesome, but they'll shy back. They'll be like, okay, maybe I'm not that awesome. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of in that space. Sorry, I'm talking more about myself than you.
no,
But
that's fine.
yeah, um, I just started acting like a couple of like almost like a year and a half ago. And when I'm auditioning, I feel really nervous about it. But like when I do table reads or when I do book the job and we're doing like rehearsals or when it does come down to performances, like I totally know what I'm doing. Like, I don't get nervous. I don't get, I might get nervous like right before I get on stage, like, oh, now I have to pee or something like that. But other than that, once I'm up there, I'm like, of course I know what I'm doing. Like, what do you mean? That's how I feel sometimes. But when someone compliments my talents, I kind of shy away. I'm like, oh, people talking me up. I'm like, and I don't want to jinx it. I think that's what it is. I
Yeah,
don't want to jinx it.
it's like we might not believe in like magic or negative negative powers, but as soon as it applies to us, you're like, yeah, but maybe
Maybe.
maybe there's something to karma that I was like, yeah, I don't want to risk it. Why bother risking?
Exactly.
So I get that. I've seen Harry Potter. I was like, I curse myself with something.
Uh, all right. So back to your Kickstarter, so-called living. What is this comic about, or comic series, I should say?
Yeah, so-called living, it's planned to be an 8 issue miniseries that ideally that world will continue after that story is done. But this current series that's out on Kickstarter now, it's books 1 and 2, but there's going to be 8 in total. It takes place in a world where zombies, vampires, werewolves, everything exists, but they exist alongside us. So they're not living in the shadows or in secret. Like everybody, like, you got up, you went to work today, and you might be working with a vampire or a werewolf. You sat beside, you had to cross over a zombie to get across the street. And that's your commonplace. There's no secrets. Everybody knows that all this happens. So, or that and it's always been there. So it's not something new. So even though like my vampires and werewolves and zombies, they all follow kind of same rules. The way people like us, which I refer to us as like normies compared to like we're not monsters. So basically, there's werewolves, zombies, vampires, and us normies is what I basically us non supernatural people
Yeah.
that and I sorry I blanked out when I went to correct about normies what I was talking about. The people's personalities, because we were basically brought up like these people were brought up with these monsters always in their lives, that the way we relate to them is completely different. So like a zombie could still bite you and turn you into a zombie, and that's crappy. But the zombie outbreaks, there's like a team that'll zoom in their van and they'll wrangle up the zombies and take care of it, almost like if you have like a raccoon under your deck. You call these people, it's like, oh, animal control, come get this raccoon from underneath my deck. Same thing
Uh-huh.
with zombies, like, oh, there's a zombie underneath my deck. I need you to come clear them out. And there'd be a team of people that do it. Like that's the job. And yeah, vampires, there'd be like a place for them to go to get blood, but there's some vampires out, that will still attack people because it's in their nature to do things, because not every vampire follows the rules, just because like humans don't follow the rules. We have people now murdering other people that
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing it, but you do. So that's the world that this story takes place in. But it's a dark comedy and it follows a character named Jack, and he gets turned into a vampire, and the story follows him adapting to this new way of living. So he doesn't know how to live as a vampire. He's been human his entire life, and all of a sudden he's just a vampire. And his first issue, he deals with mundane problems at first, like I can't get into my apartment because I'm a vampire. There's nobody to invite me into my own apartment, so I can't get in. So that's his first problem. So his first thing is I'm homeless. I'm a homeless vampire, and then he deals with issues in the second. And they're small, like walking into the sun in the morning, because you're used to just waking up in the morning and walking outside. So he does that, but he catches on fire. It's just he's not used to it. So it starts off with him just getting used to these things.
Mhm.
But even though he's a bit of a dork, and he's trying to live his life, he gets tied up in a very serious situation, very serious people that are not, they don't have a sense of humor. They're not the funny people. They're like the strong arms that are like, they pose a serious threat. So his story eventually is goofy. It starts off a goofy kind of like meet me and my friends and learn my situation. And then by the end of book 2, we start teasing where the story's going to go. And we start introducing um, the bad guys that are going to make your dark comedy darker.
Mhm.
So that's the gist of so-called living.
Yeah, I like it when people write about stories of, supernatural, paranormal creatures and whatnot, and put them in almost like a slice of life type of genre, I guess, in a way, would I guess we can call that. It kind of just flips it on like the world building and what we know about it on its head,
Mhm.
really. There's one series, was a couple of series. There's one, it's called White Trash Zombie, that I've read. I think her name is Diana Rowland. It's basically a woman gets bitten, and then she dies, and then she becomes a zombie, and she has to just like figure out her life living as a zombie in, like, I think Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So that's its whole world in itself, on top of being a zombie. And then there's another one by Drew Hayes. Um, something I forgot the title of it, but it's a whole series of a man who becomes a vampire, and he's an accountant. So he doesn't have this really extraordinary life. He's just this ordinary guy is living under extraordinary circumstances, which I like as well. It's
Mhm.
kind of like what Jack sounds like to me. He
Yeah,
just
yeah,
has
yeah,
this really normal life, but he's living with these like really extraordinary circumstances. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's
like I said, I
exactly
like if
it.
it just flips it on its head.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there's one thing about Jack, like Jack being turned into a vampire. And the first, just so, like, there might be some spoilers here for the first issue, but just so you know, the first issue is, you can read it free on Global Comics. Like, there's a link to it on the Kickstarter page, but you can just go to Global Comics, search So-Called Living, and you'll see it. So you can read the first issue free, because I felt confident in the story and the characters that I thought, hey, go read it free. And if you like it, then support my Kickstarter and get books 1 and 2. So you can't read book 2 for free, but book 1 you can. And I'll probably leave it out there forever for just people to kind of discover on their own. But one thing I did kind of falls in line with what you said is our one of the main vampire in the first issue. His name's Nick, and he's kind of like Lobo from the DC Comics meets Butcher from the Boys. Like, that's his personality. So he's more like a biker than, say, Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know what I mean? He's
Mhm.
not like, oh, my love and the moon and the deep emotional, like, broody. Like, that's not him. He's more like a just a biker that just says what's on his mind. And but he does, there's a hint to the fact that there is those vampires, like those Bram Stoker vampires, the I glitter in the moonlight, I frolic in the forest, and I'm obsessed with this person for whatever mystical reasons, just like all those tropes. And he calls those type of vampires forest fairies, as in they're just like, so he doesn't consider them real vampires because he's such like this hard ass. He doesn't consider these vampires that are out there, and they're all like super emotional and super deep and super, like, they contemplate everything. And so he's not like that. And he brings that up in the first issue because Jack starts crying over something that happens, and Nick is the main vampire. He tries to explain to him, is like, no, you don't feel feelings like that no more. So, because I'm not going to say what happened, I don't want to spoil too much, but something happened. Jack's crying, and Nick's like, no, you don't care. You're just like an autopilot. And then Nick's like, oh, you're, or Jack's like takes his hands away from his eyes. He's like, Yeah, there's nothing there. There's really like I don't feel it. But and at the end, he's giving him a pamphlet. It's like, here's how you deal, with being a vampire. He's got like he's like, here you go. It's like a little support group for like, now
Mhm,
you're a vampire. What do you do? So that's the world, and kind of lines up with what you were mentioning.
mhm, mhm. So, your collaborators that you work with, how did you find them? And how did you know that they were the right people to work with on your so-called living?
Well, for so-called living, I had a very specific art style in mind. Humberto Ramos. I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but he's an artist. He draws for like Marvel. He's done Spider-Man recently. I think he draw the cover. He might have drawn the cover of Spider-Man. It's the issue with Spider-Man and Miles Morales, like Peter Parker, Miles Morales, Spider-Man on it.
Mm,
Anyways, he's a great artist. He's been around for Humberto Ramos is a great artist, and I was looking for somebody that draws like him because I thought his style suits my story, and I believe strongly in, if you have a good idea of like what the story is and how you want to present it, there's a style that kind of matches your writing. There's a
mhm,
style that matches the tone, that matches like the message you want to get across. So it's both a visual and a visual message that's mixed in with the writing and how it's delivered to the reader. So I was looking for somebody who would draw and bring that tone to the comic book. And when I first went to like Kickstarter to look for, not Kickstarter, Twitter, I don't know why I said Kickstarter. When I first went to Twitter and I put the call out, being like, I'm looking for artists because a friend of mine suggested this. And I was like, okay, I don't expect to get much response because I don't have much of a Twitter following. I don't really use Twitter. And this is back when it was still called Twitter. And I put it out and I got tons of replies. And I was like, holy crap. I was like overwhelmed. Couldn't even get to all the uh, I didn't get through all the portfolios, but I got through a lot of them. But the trend was very much uh, like a romance teen manga flavor to the art
mhm,
style. And that's great. Like I like manga, but that art style does not match so-called living. That's not what so-called living was. That's not how it's meant to be, I guess, perceived by the reader, right? Like it didn't match my vision of how
mhm.
I saw the book. And then I came across Marco's artwork. Somebody showed me his portfolio, and I was like, he's almost perfect. Like he's so close. His art style so close. The only thing I had to tweak for his art style that I asked if he could do was his art style naturally leans very kiddie, very
Wow.
like he draws a lot of younger people getting in, like 12-year-olds getting into like adventures. He'd be great for like a Goonies, but that's the kind of his art style. So I was like, I need you to just adult up a bit but keep your style, and he did it and he nailed it. So he's been great. So I found Marco through like a chain of events that started out on a Facebook group, reading about a horror story of some writer who paid an artist to draw his book, and then that artist took the money, drew 2 pages, and then took off and never came back. So that started, and I started reading that thread because I was like, what if that happens to me? Right? I was like, I could barely like I can't afford for this to happen. I can't pay somebody a book and being like, oh well, they took the money, let's pay somebody else to do it again and take another risk. So anyways, it's through that thread I found Marco, and here we are, 2 books deep, and it's a good working relationship. We're solid.
Cool, cool. So, can you walk us through your creative process for so-called living? So from concept to completion, and how has your experience been crowdfunding your first comic through, Kickstarter?
That's a big one. That's a big question.
Yeah.
So just I want to come right out and say that this is my first comic book. Like I wrote a 9-page short
Hmm.
for an anthology, but all I did was write a script. Another artist took it over, like an artist took it over. He did it, an editor edited it. So I didn't feel like that was really my comic book. That was just like a contribution to somebody else's project.
Hmm.
And I wrote a 9-page story, but this I did from scratch. I wrote a script. I figured out how to format it. Um, and I had to find an artist and the whole Kickstarter thing. Like I've never done any of this. So
Yeah.
for me, this is like trial by fire, and I'm trying to find as much information online as possible. Um, And I find there's a lot more information online for people who want to get into comics as an artist versus people who want to get into comics as a writer. There's a
Mhm.
lot of tips on how to like write and format a script, but there's not a lot of tips on like best practices on where to find an artist, how to find an artist, how do you even start looking for an artist. Then you got the script, what do you do? Even if you find an artist, then what? Do you take it to Image Comics? Do you present it to Marvel? Do you go to Kickstarter? Like I didn't know anything, right? So I
Yeah.
started off. So I'll start my process, but I want you to know that when I sat down, that was all going through my head at the same time, right? So just driving myself insane with like, there's all this stuff I don't know, but I'm just gonna push it aside and deal with what I had to do first because I'm coming at this as a writer. So I thought, bottom line, I need to write a script.
Mhm.
Regardless of what happens, I need a script. I need a story. I'm going to do that. Then I'll find an artist. Then I'll figure out how I'm going to get this printed. Then I'll figure out how I'm going to get this to people. So I was like, I'll figure it all out. I need a script. So sat down. This is my process. So I sat down and I was like, just jotted down a rough idea of like what kind of world I want to do, what kind of story. So I came up with the world of so-called living, a world where everything happens, vampires, werewolves, but they're like me and you. They talk. They're not like special. They don't act different from regular society. They're part of regular society. So other than, feed bloods, whatever they have to do to survive, like, they're still vampires. But I was thinking like what does that world look like? So I started plotting down these kind of rules for the world. And then I started plotting down characters. I was like, okay, I want a character, which was Jack. And then I was like, okay, he's dating someone that's Jill. And then I made up these characters, kind of get a rough outline. And I want him to come across a vampire, but I don't want this vampire to be alone. His name's Nick. So I'll give him a friend. His name's Casper. And, and then I plotted out these characters, like their personalities, how they look, how they dress, how they talk, their sense of humor. Are they serious? Are they funny? Are they like I wrote down a good solid sheet that didn't bury you in like information, but gave you all the information you needed to like, I understand this. I understand this character. It was a good bio. So I wrote bios for everybody. And for Jack's original name was Mark. I named him after myself because I thought I was going to write a story about, and I was going to make myself the main character. But I
Mhm.
sat down to write this story and I couldn't because I kept referring to the main character as Mark and I couldn't write for myself. It goes back to what we were saying in the beginning. It was like, I can't sell myself. I can't say I'm awesome. So I couldn't write for myself. I couldn't write for me. I didn't know what to do. And then I was writing next to somebody and I told them, I was like, I'm stuck. I can't do anything. I've been sitting here for an hour, 2 hours. Nothing's happening. And they said, well, why don't you change the character's name so it's not Mark? That way you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for somebody else. So I was like, okay, okay. At the time I was watching 24, like, Jack Bauer. So I was like, okay, I'll name him Jack. And so like it turned out to be Jack and Jill as a fluke because it was Mark and Jill originally.
Uh-huh.
I just picked a girl's name, Jill. Done. And then I was like, I'll change it later if I need to. And then Jack was because I was watching 24 and I was like, yeah, Jack Bauer. And then it only realized later that I made Jack and Jill and they did run up a hill actually. So, um, but I made these characters, but when I write, I kind of plop these characters in situations. So I write characters are grabbing fast food. There's a zombie outbreak on the news that gets resolved. Then they're going to they're going to leave. Jill's going to break up with them. They're going to get attacked by vampires at this time. Introduce Jack's story. That's the rough plot I had. And then I just drop these characters into the situation and I just see what happens. Like, how would they react?
Mhm.
So imagine just taking characters, like say Jim Carrey and Denzel Washington. There's two very different actors, right?
Mhm.
But imagine Jim Carrey gets out of bed, smashes his toe on the bed, and it hurts his foot, but he has to go down and answer the door quickly because the dogs are freaking out. There's somebody at the door. How does he handle that situation? And then the same situation, I'll put Denzel Washington in that situation. He's going to slam his toe. It's going to be a completely different experience. He's got
Yeah.
to, right? So that's how I look at it. I just put these characters how I design them in the situation, and how would they deal with it. So if I switch their roles, it'd be a completely different story. If I put Jill in the driver's seat of this situation, or if I put Casper in the driver's seat of this situation, it would be a completely different story. So my process is create a character, give them a loose idea of what they're going to do, send them on a mission or a quest, which is like go to the grocery store, and meet a friend along the way, and then just see how that happens with the backstories that I've created for those characters. So that's my creative process of how I come up with these stories. The next process was finding an artist. Now, I tried a lot of things that people do in the beginning, which is I have a lot of artist friends. So I'm like, and I'm an artist myself, but I'm not a sequential artist.
Mhm.
So it would take me forever. It was taking me too long to do my own covers. So I like hired people to do the covers too. It's like, I'll do a cover for the next issues. I think I'll do one for myself just to see if I could get back in the game.
Mhm.
But I asked friends, hey, do you guys want to do a comic book together? It'll be like a partnership, and um, we'll I have a story already, but if you want to make any changes, I'm open to it. And we'll work together. I'll pay for everything, the printing. And my deal for them was once the book starts making money, I'll give you the first $5,000. And then after that, we split everything 50-50. And some people were on board. They're like, yeah, that's it. And these were friends. So I was having this conversation. I wasn't having this conversation with strangers being like, I want you to work for me for free and I'll pay you after if it makes money. I was trying to build a partnership
Yeah.
situation with friends of mine, and it worked for a while. But they only got a few concepts in, maybe a page or two. And then they were like, I can't do this. It's too much work. Like I work all day as an artist, and then I got to go home and ignore my family and then do it again
Hmm.
for a project that feels more like your project than our project. So I was like, okay, I get it. I wasn't hurt. I'm still talking to these people. We're all still friends.
Hmm.
There's no hurt feelings. I understand it. It's hard to do. It's hard to give up your life to do another project on the side. It takes a certain amount of dedication that is not easy to commit yourself to. So then eventually I decided, well, I'm just going to find an artist, hire them outright, and make it like and have like not a partnership. I'm gonna pay you as my artist this amount based on like what you charge. So I'm gonna pay you your amount, and whether the book makes money or not, that's what you get. You're gonna get paid.
Hmm.
And if the book like takes off, you don't earn 50%. You signed a contract. It's a work for hire. I hire you to do my project for me, and you do. We're not partners. It's more of like we work together on the book, but it's not a 50-50 partnership. If this takes off and becomes the next Walking Dead, there's not going to be a legal battle between us because you signed papers and I'm paying you as like an employee
Hmm.
situation. Because like one thing you should know is when I wrote the script, it was like 14 years ago. And
Oh,
then I
wow.
stopped for a long time and I came back because I was like, I can't, this partnership artist situation is not working. So I was like, I think I just got to think of this as like a company. I'm an employer and I'm looking to hire somebody to do my art. You create my art. That's it. You get paid, guaranteed. The book can make nothing, but you've gotten paid guaranteed. Now, if it does become like the next Walking Dead, which would be great, I'm sure everybody would love that. But if it did become something like that, then I would gladly pay a bonus. But I don't want anything on paper saying I'm obligated to do this or I'm obligated to give you anything. I just want you to know that if it does well, I will take care of you. But it that was it. But just so you understand, I'm the boss. You're the employee. That's the
Hmm.
situation. And that was open right from the beginning. I was like, that's the relationship I'm looking for. And that's what I got with Marco. So it's worked out just fine. He's good with that. And he's also good with that because when I hired Marco, another thing, this is kind of comes into the tip category, is I didn't just find Marco on Twitter or Facebook, or I was led to the trail that I found led me to a company that deals with, or that I guess works with artists. They have like a pool of artists that they pull from, and I pay the company, and that company acts like a middleman, and they pay Marco. So they have a bunch of artist portfolios, artists that work for them, and they do work for like Disney. They do work for Marvel. They do work like they have a bunch of artists that work through them, and because they're a reputable company that does this, I can trust that Marco's not just going to leave. Obviously, he's a human being. He's not, chained to his desk. he has free will. He can go leave if he wants, quit his job. That's fine. But I know that this company will then try to find an artist to take his place. And I don't have to go, he can't just ghost me and be like, well, say he could, but the company, they can't ghost me because they're a
Mhm.
reputable company. So if anybody is looking for an artist, I would recommend go, like, if you know people that are artists, or if you can trust people online, that's fine, because there are people that are trustworthy online that you like. I met Marco online. He doesn't know me. He does his art and then I pay him, and I've always paid him. So that's the situation. But that's, again, that's with a company, so they feel confident that they have um the money to back it up if somebody screws them, right? But
Yeah.
I have no reason to do that. um but yeah, it's scary because I've read so many stories online of, like, from both ends, writers that have paid artists, and the artists have taken the money and not drawn anything, or artists that have drawn things and the writers haven't paid them back.
Mhm.
It's like this, both ends are screwing each other. And it was like, just, I hate that there's people out there that
Mhm.
you can't trust, but it's just the world we live in. We have access to everybody now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, socially, you have access to everybody. And I can tell you now, a lot of those people aren't good people. There's just people that aren't good people, that aren't trustworthy people. And they're just out there, and you can't look them in the eyes. You're talking to them through Twitter, and it's hard to trust people that way. And a lot of people are trusting because, and I find a lot of people that are trusting that get screwed over are the people that wouldn't tend to do it, because you try to put, like, oh, I'm a trusting person, so I trust that you're a trusting person. I would do right by you, so you're going to do right by me, right? You kind of reflect, or I guess, yeah, project that onto
Project.
other
Yeah.
people. You
Mhm.
project that onto other people. And that's how I am. But I had to, like, rein myself in after hearing all these horror stories. I was like, okay, let's calm down. Let's think this through. Let's play this safe. And it worked out. It worked out for me. I played it safe, found Marco. Everything's good. Everything's good.
Mhm.
And as far as the Kickstarter
So how
goes,
has
so go
yeah,
ahead.
how has the Kickstarter?
Sorry, say that, you cut out a bit. Was that?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to mention the Kickstarter. I'm kind of said it at the same time. The
Oh,
Kickstarter.
okay.
How's that?
The Kickstarter was interesting because I didn't know which way to go. Kickstarter, do you go image? So I decided I'm going to go to Kickstarter because I know some people that have done books on Kickstarter and they've been very successful, but their success is different because they are artists that are successful on Instagram already. They
Mhm.
do their own thing. They do things for Marvel as well, so they're way out of my price range of somebody who I can afford, because they're getting paid the professional dollars. I could give you indie dollars. Right? So but I've worked with them in the past for just other things in the video game industry. I've worked with them. And so I was like, at least I know people who've done Kickstarters, a lot of them not comic books, but at least I can ask them for tips. I don't know anybody who's done image. So I was like, so I'll do Kickstarter. So I got into there, watched a lot of videos, listened to a lot of podcasts. I did my research. I looked at Kickstarter pages to be like, I ranked them from, like, top grossing. I looked at board game Kickstarters. I looked at comic book Kickstarters, and I was like, how do their pages look? What is successful? One of the things I noticed is, like, a lot of board games Kickstarters, I like their pages better as far as how they're laid out. I think they're prettier. They have less information as far as, like, there's not blocks of text. They have the important information, but it's like smaller blocks of text, chunks of text, great artwork, the way the page is laid out. And then go to comic book Kickstarters. And again, this is a personal preference I'm talking about, because I go to comic book Kickstarters and I was like, well, I don't like the way this page looks out as much as, like, this page. But this comic book I'm looking at, they've grossed like 60,000, 80,000. I was like, so
Mhm.
they're doing well, regardless of what I think. But then the board games is a different game because they're grossing in the millions, but it's a completely different. You buy one board game for, some of them are like $600. You buy a board game comic book, like $10. So
Yeah.
clearly they're going to be making more money with less backers. But so I did a lot of those studies, and one of the things I noticed as well is Kickstarters for board games have like 5 tiers, 4 to 5 tiers. Kickstarters for comic books, a lot of them have like 18 to 22 tiers. Like, there's so many tiers, backer levels. And for me, I found that overwhelming. But again, I've seen successful Kickstarters for comic books that have that system, and I've seen ones that aren't successful that have had that system. So I just judged it based on how comfortable I feel when I go to a page and I see like 22 backer levels. I'm like, why are they doing this? So I asked that question. I look into it, but I was like, I don't feel comfortable with it. But maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way because I'm not familiar with Kickstarters, but I don't feel comfortable with it because it's overwhelming to me. And I was
Yeah.
like, am I going to make the wrong options? Am I going to make the wrong choices? And then I looked at closely at them, and a lot of them, if you look at the backer levels, in the top ones are like 66 backers, 40 backers, 80 backers. And then at one point, it's like one backer, two backers, zero backers, zero backers, one backer, zero backers. So I was like, okay, so there's a lot of tiers that are either being ignored or have one backer. I'd rather focus on the top 3 or 4 that have like they're scoring the 60 backers, the 30 backers, the 40 backers, and try to avoid tiers that are only getting one backer or zero backers. So that's what I was looking at that. So when I built my page and I went to Kickstarter, I did a lot of homework and I tried to take the best out of everything I've learned and try to
Mhm.
apply it to my page and my process. And also, like, how much do you charge for a comic book? Like, I didn't know any of this. So
Yeah.
I found the average cost was anywhere from $10 to $15. And I think that's US. I'm Canadian. So
Mhm.
so I went down the middle. I was like $12.50 a book, which works out to like 8 and change US dollars. So and my shipping, I try to keep it as low as possible. I ask my friends how they charge for shipping. And our shipping is actually a lot lower compared to some, because I tried to back a $10 book from the States, and to ship it to me was $23. I was like,
Oh,
the book
wow.
cost 10 and the shipping cost $23 for one book. So I was like, maybe just digital on this one. So like me, we do shipping worldwide in the States for $12
Mhm.
Canadian. So it's like $8 US. And it doesn't cover everything. Like the further south you go, the more expensive it gets for us, but we just eat that cost because
Mhm.
it's important for me to just get my book in people's hands. Like making money is great, but that's not the primary goal. But the the good thing about making money, because I've had this conversation with people before. They're like, you're just in it for the money. Like it's not, money's not everything. I was like, yeah, money isn't everything. Especially as an artist, you want to get your art in front of people, and you want people to like your art. But if you're making money, then you could do more of what you love and get that stuff in front of more people, because they can keep you doing it. Because we all have to eat, and we all have to pay rent or mortgage, or
Mhm.
like life isn't free as much as we like it to be. We need a Star Trek future. Like life isn't free. So money will just help you do the things you love. Like I want to make money on it so I can keep doing things I love. I don't want to make money so I can be buried wealthy. Like that's not the goal. Like I don't care. My bank account could say zero as long as I could just keep doing things on my own. Like I don't care how much money I have. But unfortunately, society cares how much money I have, because they're like, we don't want your $0. So anyways, that was, I think I answered everything. I might
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
I don't know
you
if there
answered,
is.
you answered. I'm just looking at the Kickstarter pages now, and since I do these interviews so often, I look at them, and I think the trailer works out really well too. Usually it's just like an image right here, but I think having a bulk of the information in a video, since a lot of content nowadays is video based, especially short form video based, I should say. So they catch everything right then and there, and then they'll probably just jump straight into the rewards. And like you said, you only have like what, four or five tiers or something like that here. Usually when they have, again, from what I've seen, when they have like 10 plus, it's and the ones towards the bottom, those are like 200, $400 or whatever.
Hmm.
That's normally like signed copies of things, bundles, a lot of them are physical copies of things. Um, they add in a lot of their previous work that they've done to, or exclusives, maybe something in there. And again, this is your first comic, so you don't really have any of that.
True.
Um, so there would be no need for it. And I think sometimes people just add stuff in there just to give options.
Mhm, mhm.
But like you said, it's only like one or two people or like zero people. So it's like they're just trying to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And a lot of it doesn't stick. It's mainly just digital copy, physical copy, maybe like an exclusive alternate cover or something signed or whatever,
Mm.
which I think that's what works mostly when you're just starting out. Now when you build a following, and and your Kickstarter can be backed within like a week, then you can start doing stuff like that, more physical exclusive things and more tiers. But yeah, focusing on like four, maybe five is just fine.
Yeah, like the fifth tier on my Kickstarter is just an all in. So it's like
Yeah.
there's four different ones, and then the fifth one is just like, do you want everything? Which is like, I don't know if it is now, but for a while it was the most popular tier I had, was the all in. Which was funny because as my wife was asking me, she didn't get variant covers. She's like, well, it's the same story. I was like, yes, it's two books. Each book has three different covers, right? And they're like, but why? I was like, why would anybody buy this? It's like, because that's what we do. We're comic book people. We
Yeah, I
it
like
doesn't
variant
make
covers. I like having
yeah,
different covers.
yeah, it
It's,
doesn't have to make sense. That's what we do. It's a thing. It's like I bought so many variant covers. At least now I've slowed down. I'll just choose whichever cover I like best. And I was like, I'm buying that one instead of buying all of the available ones. Like back in the 90s, it's like Gen 13 had 13 different covers. Well, I got them all because that's what I do. But now, I've toned it down. Now I just go through the covers and I'm like, which one do I like the best? I'll take this one. And
Mhm.
but
Yeah, but
yeah,
sometimes with certain books, it may not be with comics, but with certain books with wider spines, and it's a series, if you get all of them together, the spines all have like one solid image
mhm.
together. So I mean, that's what I see when I get physical, like maybe hardcover books. I don't do it now because they're so
Yeah.
expensive, but before
I
I
enjoy
would
that
get them.
myself. I say every
Yeah.
night I go to bed and I have I think it's Dark Knight 3. I have the white covers, and if you put
Uh-huh.
them the hardcover white covers of Dark Knight 3, and if you put them uh side by side, they make an image. And also have Sin City.
Mm.
So if you put them by side, it makes an image too. So I'm a fan of that myself. Like I'm a collector sucker. Like use like, oh, limited edition foil cover, like, yeah, I'm in. Sign me in. Like sign me up. Like I get it. And I trying to explain to her. And I was like, and then there's the all in if somebody wants like, all six covers. And again, she's like, why would anybody want all six covers? It's the same book, right? I was like, yes. Well, it's and then the things come in. She's like, did you see that the all in is the biggest seller? I was like, well, I'm surprised that it's the biggest seller as well. But see, I told you. People do buy it. Like I was expecting maybe 10 people to buy it, or five people, 10 on the higher end. Um, but no, it was pretty good. It was like in the 20s now. It was like 25, I think, last time I checked.
Uh-huh.
So that was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, while we're on the topic of the rewards, so can you, I guess, just mention each one and what it entails for each
Sure.
tier?
Oh yeah. So the first tier is the digital only.
Mhm.
So you're just gonna get the standard cover digital version. That'll be a PDF. What's the term? DMR free. So basically just a PDF you can read anywhere. It's not limited to like you need this app. So that PDF is, and I actually set those up already. So
Mhm.
those are good to go once it funds. And then the next tier is the standard cover. So that's books 1 and 2 with the standard covers drawn by Marco Leone, who is the artist for the interior of the book. The third tier, which is the elite tier, that is the purple cover. I don't have it in front of me. I'm going by memory.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
purple cover with like Jack running toward the reader. That is done by Derek Loffman, who is a friend of mine. He's the one I mentioned has a lot of successful Kickstarters. He lives with me. I've worked with him. I've known him for years. Um, he's got a big following, so I asked him if he could do a cover. So he did that cover for me, and people really enjoy that cover that he did. And the one beside it is It's from Ashton Tekno Persaud. Tekno is his like online handle. So he's a photographer based in Toronto, which is like my hometown. I was born and raised in Toronto. Um, he's got an Instagram account. He's a brilliant photographer. And he's got some crazy shots that you think are drones, but he actually climbs up onto building. He like breaks into building rooftops. He climbs out on scaffolding. He does some crazy shit. You'd swear it was drones, but that's just him risking his life out on a roof. So he takes those and he gets invited. Like he was in Paris last time I saw. So he gets invited to Paris to do a show and to take pictures there. He got invited to New York to take photos there. So he's a great photo, and I love his. Sorry, he's a great photographer. I love his stuff, and I've known him since he was 10. He's like
Oh.
my. He's a good. He's the stepson to one of my best friends,
Hmm.
and so I've known him since he was a child. Now he's in his 30s, late 20s, early 30s, somewhere like that. Anyways, he I wanted his photos on one of the covers because I liked his work so much, and I thought being from Toronto, kind of pay homage to my hometown. So the shot of the streets is his photography that I put on there. It's a photo of Toronto, and it's on book 2 because in book 2 you start seeing a little bit more of the city that Jack is in. Because book 1 it's limited to a parking lot and a forest, and you think you see his apartment building, and that's it. But you start seeing more of the city in book 2. So I wanted to thought I'd throw that in there.
Hmm.
And then for the next tier, now this one's interesting. So this is the obligatory Sexpot edition. Now the I put a badge on it that's called the obligatory Sexpot edition because here's the thing. I was doing when I was back when I said I was doing my research and I was looking at the top tiered books and what funds the most. And I was talking to my wife about this the whole time. I was doing this process, and I was like, have you noticed the trend that the most funded books on Kickstarter, like the large, not the, it's either IPs, like intellectual properties, like
Yeah.
Power Rangers or whatever, or it's like big breasted, half naked women or fully naked women. It's like softcore porn. Like that's like the some of the most highest grossing comic books on Kickstarter. And my wife's looking at me like, and what do we do with that information? I was like, I don't know. Cause like there's nothing sexy about so-called living. So-called living is just a story about Jack. And it's like there's nothing sexy or sexual about so-called living. So so my wife was like, well, so then how do we compete with this? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm not going to change the story. I'm still going to tell my story. I'm not going to just come up with like some like soft core pornography just to sell. And again, I don't care that people buy that. That's fine. You know, I like sexy people just as much as the next person, right? I get that sex sells. I am not offended in any way. But in my head, I'm like, I don't know how to deal. How do I deal with this information? How do I compete? So then it occurred to me, I got it. I'm gonna because I was like, just putting a sexy person on the cover doesn't kind of sync up with the story. But if I kind of like had a tongue-in-cheek type of joke that goes along with it, kind of like having fun with the idea that to be successful as a comic book on Kickstarter, you need to have a sexy cover.
Hmm.
Like that mentality does line up with the humor of so-called living. So I put a badge on it that says obligatory Sexpot edition, indicating that you have to have a sexy edition if you want to be successful. It's just a joke, you know, like it's kind of like poking fun, having fun with it, but I'm not trying to be insulting to anybody who does this. And so the two girls that are on those covers, although they don't look like that in the book, they are characters that are in the book, but they're like sexy versions of those characters that are in the book. And I always compare this to if you go to like a Comic Con and you see this all the time. Sexy Mario, sexy Luigi, sexy
Hmm.
SpongeBob. I was like, those aren't sexy characters, but you see, you know, like some really creative cosplayers come up with some like interesting takes, like sexy takes on those characters, and they wear them out there. So that's what I was like. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take two of our two characters that are like all our characters there's nobody that comes off as sexy. They don't dress sexy. They dress very normal. They're just like you go on the subway, and that's who our characters could all be pulled off a random subway. That's how they dress. So I thought, let's take two of them and we're gonna make sexy versions of them and throw them up on the cover and just give it as an option. And the description underneath even kind of plays with that humor, saying like, in the time honored tradition of like sexy covers. I can't remember what I wrote, but it kind of has fun with the whole idea of like, yeah, we understand, we get that, sex sells and we're not a sexy book, but if you want a version, here are two options for you. But if you don't like the sexy versions, we have regular versions also put out. So
Mhm.
that's that tier. And then the last one is the all in, which you can get all 6 books and you get a super PDF. The PDF will include, oh, and all those other tiers, they also come with the PDF of the book as well as the physical. So the physical ones come with the PDF, and the cover that comes with the PDF is the cover that matches the tier you got. So when you get the all in, you get all the covers. You're going to get what I've called a super PDF, which is all the issues 1 and 2 and all the covers in one PDF.
Okay.
So you get all that. And then after that, we get to add-ons, and the add-ons are fairly simple. It's for $5. I'll sign all the books in your tier. So if you got the all in or if you got the 2, I'll sign them all. And then we have the Blood Bunny keychain. I don't know if you're looking at it right now. It's a cute little bunny, and it's about that big, and it's white acrylic. It's white and black acrylic. So we have a laser cutting machine. We make those ourselves in the house. So we have laser cut. It's a white acrylic, and as the laser cuts it, it reveals the black. So that was the bunny we made,
Mhm.
and so we make those ourselves. And for $8, you get a cool keychain, and as a bonus, because it says on the back that official member of the Blood Bunny Colony. As a bonus, if you get the keychain, your email that you back the project with will be put on a list of like Blood Bunny members. And then for future so-called living Kickstarters, we want to offer those members a bonus, either a discount to their books or a free upgrade to their tier or a free print or a limited edition sticker set or something. We're going to give them more because they're part of this member. So it's kind of like getting a Costco membership. So there's benefits to being a member. A member. I don't
Uh-huh.
necessarily know what those benefits are right now, which I mentioned in the bottom in the description. But I say at least you're getting a keychain.
Yeah.
You're getting a cool keychain that we hand make ourselves, and that's it. I think the other add-ons are just you can get additional tiers if you want them.
Yeah.
So
So this is also listed on the Kickstarter towards the bottom, but you're fully transparent on the, like I said, on the Kickstarter of your use of AI for
mhm.
so-called living. I know other artists who want to dabble in AI and others who are like fully against it, but what benefits do you see in using AI that you believe outweigh the cons of it?
Well, for the one thing was it's a lot cheaper, obviously.
Uh-huh.
But when I did the AI cover, originally there's only one cover that is AI. That's
Hmm.
it. It's like one piece of art that is AI. And originally that cover was going to be drawn um, by an artist, but that artist didn't do it. So I
Oh.
didn't pay them yet. So I didn't get screwed, but that artist didn't do it. So I was okay with that. And but the other one was drawn by my friend Jamie. He did it. He came through. That was great. So I was like, well, I could draw this cover myself, but it was like take a while. I'm rusty because even though I am an artist, I've been an art director, creative director for years. So I've been telling artists what to do, but I haven't done them myself because I've been managing artists for so long. So I thought, okay, well, I'll draw it myself. And I was like, this is taking too long. I can't do this. And then I was looking again at Kickstarters, being like, what should I draw? And I was like, wait a second, a lot of these are AI covers. So I was like, let me look into AI. So I looked into AI artwork. And what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to just do the text I want to put some effort into it.
Mhm.
So I was like, maybe I can do, text to image and then use that as a base and then do a crazy amount of Photoshop. So I'm putting work into it. But then I tried some of that. I was like, it's not working for me. So I wasn't getting the results I wanted. So I was like, okay, I know what I'll do. And then I found somebody, I can't remember what the site is because I did it like a last year. And the reason
Mhm.
I rushed to it because I thought the Kickstarter was going to go up last year.
Uh-huh.
So, but then I didn't. I held off. So I somebody gave me, I can't remember what site it is, but there's a site you can enter like, here is like an art style, here's a coloring style, here's my rough drawing, here's some photos I put in, and I made this Frankenstein of like my wife and my friends of like photos of their heads and their bodies, and then I drew arms like holding this, holding a shake. So I did this Frankenstein of a person that was a mix of like my scribbles, my drawings, then I found some art styles of like coloring kind of like this, and you pump it into the system and then it spits something out. And after it spit out a few things that were just horrific monsters. I was like, it took me a while to get used to figuring out like how this works. And then I did, and then it was still wasn't perfect. So I still had to Photoshop a lot on top of it to fix it. So basically, I didn't want to use text to image. So
Yeah.
I went around the hard way, and I honestly can't remember. I shared it was, I can't remember what site it was. Regardless, there's so many. Because
Mhm.
since then, I was actually hired by a company to do research into different AI options.
Okay.
They just wanted me to look into it for them and do tests and report tests to, because they're not necessarily putting out the artwork. They wanted me to test it to create AI artwork for them to see if this is all behind the scenes, like digital. They want to see if their software can read the certain points of AR imaging or AI imaging. So the way they're using it is they're not putting it out to people. They're not like, hey, here's the AI art, put it out. I did just a bunch of research. I produced a bunch of artwork. I gave it to them. So since then, I've learned a lot more about AI. But in that process, I've been through so many websites. They all start to look the same to me. And I
Yeah.
can't remember for the life of me what's what. And they keep sending me links to be like, oh, try this one. And I was like, okay, yeah, I've never done that one before. Log in. I was like, oh, I already logged in. Like Chrome already says, yeah, here's your login credentials. You've already have an account here. Oh, okay. So never mind. I've already used it. Here's my results. I just hand them the results. But anyways, I went on a rant.
No, no,
But
no, it's fine. It's fine. I definitely
yeah,
wanted to ask that question because I saw it towards the bottom. And like I said, a lot of people want to get into it. They see it as a tool, but they still don't know the specifics of it and how far,
and I
how
get
far
it.
they want to go with it. And like, does the AI take your art and put it out there? They really don't know. So you're like the first person that I have access to that it has used it pretty much
Yeah,
in their work.
and
And
there's a
has been transparent about it.
yeah, and there's a lot of like there's a lot of the hate that comes toward, again, I've worked with a lot of artists in my career. A lot of the hate that comes toward AI is that you're taking money away from artists. Like you could
Yeah.
pay somebody to do this, but here's the thing about that. And I get both sides of the argument. I understand because coming from an artist, I get it. But when big companies use AR artwork to skimp on paying employees, that like you have the money to pay employees, but you're not. So I get people getting angry at them. But then at the same time, there are people out there that can't afford employees, or like I've paid, like, first of all, I've paid a lot of money into making these books and the cover. I've paid everybody who did a cover, they got paid. Everybody who did the interior artwork, they got paid. So I've put out a lot of money. So when somebody's like, oh, but you didn't pay an artist to do that, so I'm not going to back you. I was like, well, you you could either not buy that cover, but I can guarantee you AI is not going to receive your money. The people who put the blood and sweat to write the story, to do all the artwork inside, to do all the other covers, that's who's going to get the money, right? Like
Mhm.
it's the real people who put a lot of hard work. And like this one-off cover was just a one-off to kind of just play along with the whole suited to, well, it satisfied two needs, which was I needed to get something out quick, and it also plays along with the fact that so many of these sexy covers are AI. And I wanted to be transparent about it because I don't believe everybody is. A lot of people
Mhm.
try to pawn off work, AI artwork that way. But a lot of things you're going to see that is AI generated artwork, it's not taking most of it that you see is not taking money away from artists because those people don't have money to pay artists to begin with. And I did an AI, like a test for myself that was just text generation. I literally used like Chat GPT to do an ad when I was trying to promote. And I was like,
Mhm.
the way I looked at it was different than how other people looked at it. So I put out 12 ads, all of it using, well, sorry, 11 of them using artwork that was produced by my artist that did the book. I just, went to Photoshop, clipped pieces I wanted, put them together in a hodgepodge of, an image, a nice little square to promote the book. And I put it out there. And then I put one of them, I was like, oh, I want to do something that's kind of like somebody in the real world reading the book on the subway. But I was like, I don't have a subway, and like I've moved out of Toronto. I live in London, Ontario now. There's no subways here. I don't want to. And I was like, I don't know who I'm gonna just take. I'm not a professional photographer. So first thing I did was like, I'm gonna go to my stock photography site that I use, that I pay for, and I'm gonna find stock photography of somebody reading a book on a subway, and I'm gonna replace that book with a comic book. But the site I pay for never has anything I need. So I was like, I don't know what to do. So I was like, can I just Google this and just piece it together? I was like, no. And I was like, it's kind of weird because I'll be using Google images and an ad if somebody I don't know or I'm not paying for. So then I realized ChatGPT. I was like, oh, what if I do ChatGPT? I was like, girl reading comic book on subway.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a sexy ad. It was just a person. I just wanted a girl reading a comic book on a subway. So and I got something, and I was like, oh, that's close enough. I'll Photoshop my book in there, and I did it, put it out. And so many people are like, you could be paying an artist for this, you're to do this artwork. And I was like, first of all, I've paid the artist tons, and I've put out 11 ads for art that I paid for that's out there. But the only ad that's getting attention is this one.
Yeah.
The one AI ad I put out is getting out. So, and because people are commenting negatively on it, it still counts as being engaged with. So it's still so Facebook is going to promote it more because
Yeah.
it's getting the most engagement. So the best thing to do to fight AI is don't comment on it. Even if you're like, this sucks, you might affect the person doing it, but Facebook is going to pump it out even more because it's getting more engagement than the ones that were actually hand drawn.
Mhm.
So but when I did it, I didn't think it was like I'm pulling over something over on someone. I was like, I looked at it as like stock photography. So it's like I'm paying Chat GPT. So I was like, just like I'm paying a stock site. I was like, create me this image, spit it out. I was like, hey, I use it as stock photography, and it's a one shot thing that just got thrown away. I ran that ad for like a week or 2 weeks, I can't remember, and then thrown away. And I was like, I can't afford to pay an artist. Like, what am I going to pay them? $500, $700 to do a piece of artwork that's just going to be thrown away? I was like, I'm not a corporation. I'm just one person trying to do his best to put out this comic book. And if and as again, it's artists that are writing this because as an artist that does sequential artwork, you can draw your own comic book and write your own story, right? And you could use ChatGPT to write your story too. It doesn't work as well. Like it works on both ends. Like ChatGPT can screw over writers, right?
Yeah.
But it's easier as an artist to pull off a comic book and just write your own story than it is as a writer to draw. Because if you're a writer and you can't draw, then you're nobody's going to read your comic book because it's going to be like you're not going to lure anybody in with it, right? You need the bait. The art's the bait, and then the story
Yeah.
keeps them in there. So um, AI at the same time, I think you need to be open about it, and then people who don't like it won't support it. People who do will support it. But like if you can't afford to pay an artist, it's expensive. It's expensive. Like me and my wife, we went in the hole to pay Marco ahead of time.
Mhm.
And because we needed to pay him ahead of time because we can't wait for the Kickstarter money for that, or we'd have nothing to show. So
Yeah.
the Kickstarter money is hoping to pay us back for Marco and then pay for the printing. So that's the plan. And then allows us to do the next Kickstarter. So we're in a position where we're able to at least go in debt, but we're able to incur that debt to get this comic book done. But there are people out there who just can't. So at the same time, you could argue that, and I know this would like it triggers people. So I'm getting both ends, but there's so many people arguing the other way, and I'm not arguing one way or the other. I understand both sides of the story, but I, it ends up sounding to me that if you can't afford to pay an artist, then if you're not an artist, then you're not allowed to be creative. Only the people that can afford, so only the wealthy or the well off get to advance their
Mhm.
creativity. Where AI gives people the option that if you can't afford it to share your ideas differently, so using it more as a tool. That's how I look at it. But I see what people are. I don't want to get on this argument either way, but there's so many people talking about it the one way. That's why I'm giving it the other side of the conversation
Yeah,
because it's
I
like,
definitely, yeah, I definitely wanted to hear the other side of it. Someone, because like I said, I've never heard anyone on the other side explaining from their perspective the benefits of it. So luckily, I was able to get in contact with you, and you could explain it to me. Um, but are you doing any cons this year, Mark? And where can people find you online?
yeah. So well, online, just go to so-called living on Instagram, Facebook. I haven't done much with those socials yet because I've been tied up with they kind of turned up around the same time as the Kickstarter. So I've been kind of busy with the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
But also, Board Game Coffee is my YouTube channel. And that it covers board games, but that's where you'll find me. So if anybody wants to reach out, Board Game Coffee on YouTube and Instagram, they do, those channels are doing fairly well. So they're the bigger channels. I haven't really had time to commit time to so-called living
Mm-hmm.
so much yet. But ideally that'll grow too. But we'll see. That's where they can find me.
Okay, and are you doing any conventions this year?
Oh, conventions. That's I knew there was another part to that question. So yes. I don't know which ones they are yet, but they're all like so far it's local. So keep so anything around London, Ontario, Toronto. But here's the thing. We've booked all these conventions already. No books yet. So we've I've kind of taken a bit of a leap and got like a bit of an early run that's in the works. So ideally, because I want to be able to send books out as fast as possible. Because I know as a person who's backed over 165 projects themselves self is I like to get things quick. But board games, you wait like 2, 3 years before you get your game. So I was
Mm.
like, for this comic book, I was like, it'd be cool if I can send it out as fast as possible. So I was like, now that I have this money locked in, I was like, maybe I can do small run, get it out to the people who are to support me. But obviously, if everybody backs out for some reason, there's a mass exodus, then I'm screwed. So please don't do that if you're watching. Um, but it's quite possible that I'll have tables at cons that I'm gonna have to just get rid of or give to somebody else or cancel because the books won't be here yet. Because well, I think most of them are far enough out that I'll be okay,
Mhm.
but it's possible. So yeah, the plan is to do cons. I don't know, I can't remember. There's a few in London, Ontario, Forest City Comic Con, London Comic Con. Also doing Shock Stock, which is a horror comic. Sorry, it's a horror con. It's not necessarily comics, but I thought being a horror comic book, we'd stand out. So
Yeah, I've done a horror. I've done one horror con, and I was surprised at how many people were interested in my books. Mine is like urban fantasy paranormal, and it's not so much scary as it is like action adventure, but a lot of people were interested in it. So yeah,
good. That's what I
that
like
was
to
pretty
hear.
cool.
That's what I like to hear. And
Yeah.
we're going very because I saw videos. I've never been to shock. I've been to horror cons that are part of like bigger cons, like fan
Hmm.
expos that are like horror, sci-fi, comic book. I go to those. Um, but I've never gone to one that was specifically for horror. And I looked at this video of this one, and not surprisingly, there's a lot of black collars with spikes, black t-shirts, black
Hmm.
posters, black skulls. It's just it I get it. It's the horror genre. It's like a heavy metal concert just like exploded in this place, right?
Hmm.
So I get that. But our book, the setup we have is interesting because first of all, our standard covers are very white. So they're going to stand out against this. Everything is like black Metallica posters everywhere,
Uh-huh.
and my assistants, who is my wife and a friend of mine, they're gonna they have white tank tops and white bunny ears that say so-called living across the front. So they're gonna stand out against all these like heavy metal black t-shirts. So in this whole environment, because I was looking at the video, I was like, our table is definitely going to stand out because I think people are going to be like, what's with the bunny motif? If you've noticed in the Kickstarter, there's a bit of bunny motif. The trim,
Yeah.
the entire Kickstarter is bunny silhouettes. So that's how we're setting up the our booths. Like I'm starting to plan for that already. I've already got those pull out standy things. You know,
Uh-huh.
you wheel them out. We ordered those already. And just today, because there was like a 30% off discount, I got a big banner that says so-called living. I ordered that. I haven't gotten it yet. I just ordered it before. I ordered it probably 30 minutes before we started talking.
Oh
so
wow.
so I just sent that out there. And so yeah, so I'm gonna be doing cons as much as I can. I try to get to indie cons, but it was too late. Like there's TCAF in Toronto, but I know people that go there every year and they're on a waiting list to get in. So
Oh
I'm not
wow.
going to get in because I waited way too long. Again, this is another thing I don't know about. So I'm learning as I go. I'm a complete noob.
Mhm.
So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again to writer and creator Mark Maia for joining us here today to promote his new comic series, So-Called Living, now on Kickstarter until April 25th. All of Mark's socials, which he just mentioned, will be listed in this episode's details alongside the Kickstarter link for those who are interested. Again, I'm KS Garner, and you're listening to the Solo Nerd Podcast. Thank you.
See you guys.